right, thanks for watching. This is the image that we're going to be creating in this photo manipulation. Obviously, it's of a military style pinup, and it definitely has a very low-key feel about it. About the assets, this is a 1/6 scale TBLeague model. All the clothes, the rifle, I was able to purchase off of eBay. The background is a typical plastic Humvee model that I built, painted, and distressed that I'm using in the background. If I haven't provided a link to download these assets, ask for them in a comment and I'll make them available for download. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've created a document that is 3600 pixels this direction and 4660 pixels high. And the first thing we're going to do is do a color fill. Solid color here. And the color we're going to be using is 38 or 363823. Then we are going to drag on our background and center that. Okay, I'm going to add a mask. Make sure black selected, brush, 100% opacity. And I'm going to just black out most of the sky and the mountains behind. The Humvee's going to pretty much cover up that entire area. But one thing I also want to do is I want to create a highlight right here in the center. And so I'm going to drop this opacity, and then I'm going to use the brush to slowly just encapsulate that center to give it a little more drama. Okay, now we're going to add a brightness and contrast, and I'm going to make that a clipping mask. I'm hitting Alt, or you can click this. I guess I'll click that. Or you can do Alt click. We'll do the same thing. And then I'm going to bring that brightness down quite a bit to about 70, 72, something like that. Okay, now we're going to just add a new layer, and we're going to create a glow. This will kind of look like there's a late evening light coming through and just shining down in this direction. And so the color that I want to use first is this color, which is A8D900. And I want to make sure this is soft, which is. Just going to create a dot, click that a couple times. Oh, no wonder. Hold on. I'm going to make sure my brush is set to 100%. Click on that, should only have to do that once. And then I'm just going to distort this. So you right click, hit distort, and just going to create more of a beam out of this and bring it right through the center here. Then I'm going to add a second glow layer. And I'm going to make this a little brighter color. Which is D1FF32. Same thing. I'm going to make this a little smaller. Right click, hit distort, and bring that down through. Widen that up a little bit. Okay, so there's our glow that which will be sending a light beam basically underneath the Humvee as well as the model. So we can go ahead and add the Humvee now. And then I'm going to add an inner shadow. So I'm going to right click on here, go up to blending options, go to inner shadow, and we're going to create a black inner shadow that's basically already pretty much set up the way I want it to be. And the main reason I'm doing this is this kind of has a bit of a white glow around it from when I extracted it, and so this will kind of darken those edges and help minimize that look of that glow that was created. I'm just going to center this a little better. Hit OK there. Okay, and then we're going to add a global selective color. And I'm going to go into the neutrals. And we're going to set cyan to around 13. Just bump the magenta up a little bit. Yellows we're going to bump up to about 20. And then we're going to darken everything up by about 16. And that's adding to that overall low-key effect. So now we're ready to add our model. And then we're going to do some filtering on her. So one of the things that I do with and this is already set up as a smart filter, or I would say convert to smart filter, that I do with a lot of the images that particularly have a lot of skin is I like to have a very clean canvas. And particularly being this is a plastic kind of rubberized model, they can get a little bit of staining and discoloration here and there, but I also will do this to real people as well to reduce the amount of defects that can show up on the skin. And so I remove detail so that when we start adding detail back, it doesn't exaggerate some of those flaws. So I should go back. And so I've just ran clarity down by about 40, gone to detail, just removing any noise. And because we've removed a lot of detail, I am going to sharpen this back up to around 100. And you can see that kind of flattens that out. But now what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of filters, and I'm going to use the knit collection. Now I have a tutorial out there called Add Amazing Detail to Your Images that uses just Photoshop, and it gets you an effect that looks pretty close to what I'm going to be using Color Effects Pro here to do. So you could refer to that tutorial if you don't have the knit collection. So I'm going to go to Color Effects Pro. And I'm going to do a clarity bump. And that's just going to add a little bit of contrast and a little bit of detail back. And then I'm going to do one more, go back to the knit collection. Go down here to fur detail. This is the fur detail filter. And I really like the way this adds a kind of dodge and burn effect, as well as creating some really nice detail. And you can just see how dramatic that is. Now I want to do another camera raw filter, so I'm going to go to filter, go to camera raw, and we're going to do some color grading to help her fit in a little bit better. So we're going to go up here to about 2 o'clock on the midtones, the shadows right around 11 o'clock. And the highlights around 1:30. Just about like that. And then that definitely helps her fit back in. Okay, so now let's add some shadow. So first off, I will do shadows with the Humvee. So I'll come above this selective color, or below the selective color layer, do the shadow, and you're going to hit default. I'm going to hit the D to bring this back to black and white, or you can just click this. Make sure that it is a low opacity, right around 25%. And then obviously we have this light coming in this direction. So this is going to kind of throw the shadows just this way. And it doesn't have to be very dramatic because it's a pretty simple lighting. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the model. And again, the same thing with her. Something like that. Make sure I get the gun here. Okay, now I'm going to go to a little harder and a smaller brush. And I just want to make a darker shadow, kind of where these would be touching the ground, just to make that shadowing a little more dramatic, something along those lines. So she's obviously standing in some fairly high grass, and so to help that blend in better, I'm going to go back to the Humvee. I'm going to add a mask. And then I'm going to find a brush, a grass brush here. And then I'm going to use that on this mask to kind of make it look like grass is coming up, you know, in front of the tires here. And they are really shadowed, so maybe this isn't going to be that dramatic, but okay. And then I want to do the same thing with my model. So we'll add a mask here and do the same thing here. Take that opacity back up to 100%. Okay, something about like that. And let's do the same thing with the rifle stock here. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to do a brightness and contrast global. Oh, sorry, I want to do that globally. So at the top here, and I want to darken this down. Then I want to add the mask. I'm going to do Control I. Make sure I have a white brush selected. Make sure I have the brush. Go back to a normal soft brush. Take the opacity down. Make a fairly big brush and just kind of take that edge and darken it up, just to, again, to add to that low-key effect I'm going for with this. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to create a stamp which is going to merge all of the layers together. And you do that by hitting Control, Alt, Shift, and E. And that will create this stamp. And then to finish this off, I'm going to add a couple of filters from the knit collection. The first one I'm going to add is a clarity bump again, just to add just a little more detail. And then I'm going to add a second filter. Which is called On the Dark Side. And it's going to be too much, so we'll lower the opacity to minimize the effect, but it's going to just add to this low-key effect that I'm trying to achieve with this photo. And so I'm going to run this down to about 60 and maybe even 70%. You can see how that adds that overall darker tone to the image. So that's about it. That's a relatively simple photo manipulation today to do, but I think it has a pretty cool look about it, a really nice lighting effect without having to do a lot of work. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll check out some of my other videos.